I'm Brooklyn.
I still remember the day of the formal while reading like it was yesterday. The conference room was filled with the familiar faces of my family, but the atmosphere was tense, charged with unspoken words and hidden agendas. I sat there, my heart pounding, waiting for the truth to be revealed. Gerald Thompson, my father's long-time estate attorney, began the proceedings. As he went through the standard formalities, I watched my mother, Isabella, and my brother, Leo, sitting across the table. My mother was dressed in an elegant black Armani suit, the pearl earrings glistening at her ears, a symbol of her status in the family. Leo, on the other hand, was wearing a Prada suit, his hair perfectly styled, trying to maintain an air of confidence. When it came to the matter of the family house, Gerald paused. Regarding the house on Elm Street, he said slowly, "There's an issue." The room fell silent. Leo sat up straight, his eyes narrowing. "What kind of issue?" he demanded. Gerald removed his glasses, cleaned them on his tie, and put them back on. "The property on Elm Street is not part of Mr. Harris's personal estate. In 2007, your father transferred it into a limited liability company called Harris Family Holdings, LLC. I watched as the color drained from my mother's face. Leo looked utterly confused. "What the hell is Harris Family Holdings?" he shouted. Gerald pulled out a thick folder from beneath his notes. On the cover, in my father's neat handwriting, was a label. Property documents. Do not destroy. He laid out the documents one by one. In 2007, your father transferred the Elm Street property into this limited liability company. The LLC was properly formed, the transfer was legally recorded with the county, and all taxes and fees have been paid every year since. So, the company owns the house, Leo said, his voice tight.
Fine.
Who owns the company? Gerald looked at me. The operating agreement specifies a single member, one person with complete control over the LLC and all its assets. That person is Brooklyn Harris. The silence in the room was deafening. For a moment, no one moved. Then Leo exploded out of his chair. "That's impossible. She manipulated him. She got to him when he was sick and confused." Gerald remained calm. "The documents were executed in 2007. Your father was 51 years old and in perfect health. The signatures were notarized by a licensed notary public and witnessed by his accountant, who is prepared to testify to his mental competence at the time." My mother finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "He never told me. 28 years of marriage, and he never said a word." I sat very still, feeling the weight of years of family dynamics shifting. I remembered how it all started. 20 years ago, I was 17, sitting at the dining room table with college acceptance letters in front of me. I had worked so hard in high school, and I was accepted into some of the best colleges in the state, including Stanford and UCLA. I was excited but also worried about how to pay for it. My mother picked up the Stanford letter and scoffed. "Why would we spend that kind of money on you? You're a girl. You'll get married, have a family, and that will be your life. There's no need for such an expensive education." I looked at my father, hoping for some support. But he just stared at his newspaper, saying nothing. Meanwhile, Leo, who was 2 years older than me and already at Berkeley, was getting everything he wanted. My parents had bought him a BMW for his 18th birthday and paid for his expensive dorm room. I was given a list of part-time jobs and told to figure it out on my own. So I did. I applied for every scholarship I could find and landed enough to cover most of my tuition at UCLA. I worked 3 part-time jobs during the day at a bookstore, evenings at a coffee shop, and weekends as a tutor. I barely had time to sleep, and I ate ramen noodles most of the time because I couldn't afford anything else. But I graduated with a 3.9 GPA and a degree in finance. After graduation, I stopped talking to my family for 3 years. I couldn't stand the way they had treated me. I felt like I was never good enough, like I was just an afterthought in the family. Then one night I got a call at 3 a.m. My mother's voice was frantic. "Your father had a heart attack. He's at the hospital. Come now." I rushed to the hospital in my old Toyota Corolla. When I arrived, Leo was already there, sitting in the waiting room, looking calm. By the time I reached the ICU, my father was gone. The last time I had spoken to him was 6 months ago, a short phone call where he had asked how I was doing, and I had said fine. The morning after my father's death, I drove back to the house I grew up in for the first time in 3 years. It was a beautiful Victorian-style house in the suburbs of Los Angeles, with a large front yard and a porch where I used to sit and read as a child. Leo was waiting at the door. He gave me a half-hearted hug and said, "Long time, sis. You look tired." I didn't respond. I noticed the Louis Vuitton suitcases in the hallway and the new golf clubs leaning against the wall. I knew Leo had been struggling with his business, but I also knew he was living a lavish lifestyle. I went upstairs to my old room, but it was no longer mine. It had been turned into a storage room for Leo's things. I stood in the doorway, looking at the mess, feeling a sense of betrayal. The funeral was scheduled for 5 days later. I handled all the logistics, from calling the funeral director to writing the obituary. Leo, on the other hand, was in charge of accepting condolences. He was good at putting on a show, acting like he was the most grieving son in the world. On the third day, I noticed that my mother and Leo were having hushed conversations in the living room. Whenever I walked in, they would stop talking. I caught fragments of words like funeral, real estate, and quickly. On the fourth night, I was passing by the kitchen when I heard Leo on the phone. I know. I'll have the money soon. Just give me a few more days." His voice was full of fear. When he saw me, he hung up immediately. "Who was that?" I asked. "Nobody. Work stuff," he replied. I knew he was lying. He hadn't had a real job in over a year. The night before the funeral, I couldn't sleep. I decided to go to my father's old office in the basement. It was a cluttered room with old bookshelves and filing cabinets. I started sorting through the files, hoping to find something that would give me some comfort. In one of the filing cabinets, I found a folder labeled Important Documents. Inside, there was my birth certificate, some old photos, and a single sheet of paper with the logo of Harris Family Holdings, LLC. I stared at the paper. It was an operating agreement, filled with legal jargon that I didn't fully understand. But I saw my name in the text and my signature at the bottom, the handwriting of my 22-year-old self. I remembered that day. My father had called me and asked me to come home to sign some papers. He had said it was just administrative stuff for the family business, nothing important. I had trusted him and signed without reading the fine print. I had completely forgotten about it until now. The next morning, I showed the paper to my mother. She waved it off. "That company dissolved years ago. Don't waste your time on it." But something told me to keep the paper. The funeral was a cold and rainy day. Over 50 people came, including my father's old friends, colleagues, and relatives. Leo delivered the eulogy, talking about how close he and my father were, how they had gone on fishing trips together and shared so many memories. I sat in the back row, listening to his lies, feeling angry and hurt. After the final prayer, most people started to leave. But Leo stepped back up to the podium. "If I could have everyone's attention for a moment," he said. "Our family has been discussing what to do going forward, and we've made a difficult decision. We're going to sell the family home." A murmur went through the crowd. My aunt, Patricia, put a hand to her chest. "The house on Elm. Your father loved that house." Leo nodded, pretending to be sad. "I know, but it's time for a fresh start. Mom doesn't want to be there alone, surrounded by memories. And the upkeep is too much for her to handle." He paused and then added, "We've already discussed it as a family. Mom, me, and Brooklyn were all in agreement." My stomach dropped. I hadn't agreed to anything. I hadn't even been asked. I started to stand up, but my mother turned around and gave me a warning look. "Don't you dare make a scene," she said. After the announcement, people came up to my mother to offer their condolences. "Such a hard decision. Your husband would understand." No one asked me what I thought. I stood there, feeling like an outsider in my own family. That night, I tried to talk to my mother and Leo. I told them that I hadn't agreed to sell the house. Leo laughed. "Come on, Brooklyn. You haven't been part of this family in years. What do you care what happens to the house?" I was angry. "I care because it's our family home, and I have just as much right to be part of this decision as you do." My mother's expression hardened. "You have no right. You walked away. You didn't call, didn't visit. And now you want to come back and demand a say. Leo added, I need the money from the house to pay off my debts. If you make a scene, I'll tell everyone how you abandoned Dad when he needed you most. I felt like I was being attacked from all sides. I couldn't believe that they were using my past against me, but I knew that I couldn't let them take the house without a fight. 3 days after the funeral, my mother called a family meeting at the house. 15 people crowded into the dining room, including my aunts, uncles, and cousins. My mother stood at the head of the table, a stack of papers in front of her. Leo sat to her right, looking at me with a smug expression. Here's the situation, my mother began. Your father didn't leave a complicated estate. The house is the primary asset, worth around $1,200,000. My plan is to sell it, pay off outstanding debts, and use the remainder to support myself in my retirement. My grandmother, Rose, looked at me. What about Brooklyn? My mother smiled. Brooklyn has her own career. She doesn't need the support. She moved out years ago and built her own life. I'm proud of her for that, but she doesn't need the house. I spoke up. I'm not asking for anything. I'm asking to be included in the decisions about our family's property. Leo sneered. You are included. You're sitting right here, aren't you? The room erupted in uncomfortable laughter. An hour later, Leo slid a document across the table to me. It was a disclaimer of interest in estate property. What is this? I asked. My mother said, It's simple. You sign this, and you formally release any claim to the house or the proceeds from its sale. It protects everyone, keeps things clean. I stared at the paper. You want me to give up my inheritance? Leo said, Dad didn't leave you anything in his will. This just makes it official, so we can move forward without complications. I asked, How do you know what Dad left me? My mother and Leo exchanged a glance. We had the will reviewed by a lawyer. The house goes to Mom. That's it. This is just paperwork. I was skeptical. If I already have no claim, why do you need me to sign? Leo's jaw tightened. Because we want this done quickly. The buyer's ready. We don't need some estranged daughter showing up later claiming she deserves a cut. My mother leaned forward. If you don't sign, I'll tell everyone in this room and everyone who wasn't here exactly what kind of daughter you've been. How you abandoned your father when he needed you most. I picked up the pen, but then I put it down. I need time to think. Leo's smile disappeared. You have 24 hours. That night, I drove back to my apartment, feeling defeated. But then I remembered the paper in my purse, the one with the logo of Harris Family Holdings, LLC. I pulled it out and looked at it again. I decided to call Gerald Thompson, the estate attorney listed in my father's funeral program. The next day, I went to Gerald's office. He was an older man in his late 60s, with white hair and kind eyes. When I showed him the paper, his face lit up. Do you know about Harris Family Holdings, LLC? He asked. I said, My mother said the company dissolved years ago. Gerald shook his head. Your mother is mistaken. In 2007, your father transferred the Elm Street property into this LLC. You are the sole member of the LLC. You have been for 15 years. I was shocked. That's not possible. I would have known. Gerald explained, Your father was very specific about confidentiality. He noticed changes in Leo's behavior, gambling, debts. He knew that if anything happened to him, Leo would find a way to drain every asset the family had. So, he created the structure to protect the most valuable one, the house. I felt tears in my eyes. All those years, I thought my father didn't care about me, but he had been protecting me all along. Gerald handed me a sealed envelope. Your father gave me this 3 months ago. He asked me to hold it until you needed it. I didn't open it right away. I was too emotional. Gerald said, There's going to be a formal will reading on Friday. I'll invite everyone who was at the family meeting. I told him, They'll fight this. They'll say I manipulated Dad or that the documents are fake. Gerald smiled. Let them say whatever they want. I've been preparing for this moment for 15 years. The paper trail is impeccable. I decided to set the record straight in the same venue where they had tried to humiliate me. I wanted the truth to come out the same way the lies had. The night before the will reading, Leo called. 24 hours is up. Have you made your decision? I said, I'll be at the reading tomorrow. He said, good. Bring a pen. We'll get this wrapped up. After he hung up, my mother called. Her tone was softer. Brooklyn, I know things have been difficult between us, but Leo is in trouble. He owes money to some very dangerous people. Over $450,000. The house was supposed to be our last resort. I said, I'm sorry Leo is struggling, but selling Dad's house isn't going to fix him. It's just going to enable him to keep going. I hung up the phone and finally opened my father's letter. His handwriting was shaky, but the message was clear. Brooklyn, I know your mother and brother haven't treated you fairly. I'm sorry I never had the courage to say so out loud. I tried to leave you something they couldn't take away. You're the only one I trust with what matters. On Friday morning, I arrived at Gerald's office. The family started to arrive one by one. My mother and Leo were dressed in their best suits, looking confident. Gerald began the will reading. When he revealed that I was the owner of the LLC and the house, all hell broke loose. Leo was furious. He tried to attack me verbally, but Gerald shut him down with the evidence. My mother was in shock, realizing that she had been kept in the dark. I stood up and said, I'm not here to gloat. I'm here because Dad wanted me to have this. He saw what was coming, and he protected me. Leo, you need real help, not money to pay off your debts. I offer my mother a chance to stay in the house under a formal lease, $1 a month, renewable yearly, at my discretion. And I made it clear that Leo couldn't live there. After the meeting, my grandmother, Rose, caught up with me. She took my hand and said, I knew about the LLC. Your father asked for my blessing 3 months ago. I wanted to see if your mother would do the right thing, but she didn't. You did the right thing, Brooklyn. Leo also caught up with me outside. He looked broken, his face pale. He told me about the people he owed money to, how they had been threatening him. I told him that he needed to go to rehab, and if he really committed to getting help, we could talk about what came next. My mother was waiting by my car. She looked small and defeated. She asked if my father had left anything for her. I told her the truth, that he hadn't mentioned her in the letter. She flinched, but then she said, I raised Leo the way I was raised. Sons are the future, daughters are just temporary. But I see now that I was wrong. 2 days later, I received the keys to the house and the official documents. I moved back to the house on Elm Street on weekends, clearing out the clutter and making it feel like home again. Leo checked himself into a 90-day rehab program, and I sent him a letter saying I was rooting for him. He wrote back, thanking me. My relationship with my mother is still a work in progress. We don't talk much, but there's a newfound respect between us. And I've learned that sometimes strength is not about fighting back, but about having the patience to let the truth come out. My father may not have said, I love you, often, but he showed it in the most powerful way.